So what we're going to do today is, quite a few years ago, I wrote an article for our association in Pitfalls of winter preventive maintenance. And I already know, Harley and all you guys from up north here, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then I start to think about, like, okay, is somebody like Robert from Florida gonna care? But the thing is, if you have trucks that come from the south and you come up into our area, shame on you if you're not prepared, because I'll be very honest with you, a lot of the issues that I have down here is exactly a lot of the guys come from the south and stuff, and it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, what did I get into? Well, you got into a whole hell of a, I gotta watch my language, different country over here when it comes wintertime. So we're gonna get going here. I'm gonna flip over into slides, and again, thank you guys. You're in Rochester. Is that Rochester, New York? Hopefully. I know there's other Rochesters in the country. Yes, okay. You guys know exactly also from that Lake Ontario, so. But anyway, this is the title, Pitfalls of Performing PMs During Winter Months. Don't worry about me, never did. Nobody cares, not even my wife, But what we're going to cover over here is the effects of extreme weather on trucks and technicians. And I got to tell you, honestly, we've had some very extreme in quite a few years. Our Route 90 over here, going from west to east to west, west to east, doesn't really matter. Corridor has been closed on and off quite a few times, and that taxes you. So within an hour, I'm not quite sure how much I'm going to get done. Okay, I just saw over there, I look interested. Harley, you just made my day. I'm over there like, should I, put a fancy shirt on or not? But I figured, guess what? I know you guys had your Thanksgiving up there in the 13th, I believe, but ours is coming up. So I figured I'll, kind of like, Harley, I'm doing it for the holidays. But anyway, component systems require special attention. I'm going to not necessarily fly by the seat of the pants, but you guys know more than anybody else, within an hour, we'll try to do the best we can. Light up boat. Nice. I'm going to keep that in mind for December. Going to highlight air system, whatever we can come up with. And then I decided that, what, in our area, it is quite a task to work on these vehicles in the wintertime. So I'm figured I'm going to put together a little evening webinar with 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, and really get in depth. But hopefully this will get us all in the mood for the winter. Not that anybody wants to be. I'm thinking about bow tie. Harley, how might I keep this going? Thinking about the bow tie. Anyway, real world of preventive maintenance. A company can make great financial decisions affecting profit levels, quite often buying the greatest telematics and software, and that's kind of a little bit of a not sure what direction we're going. And basically they're doing to generate more efficiency at all levels of company. And of course AI is definitely getting a big push, big time, However, this is the real world. Failures at even the most basic level can sometimes make or break a company. And that's where it really happens. It happens on the floor, us guys, okay? You can have all the software and spreadsheets, but they don't crawl under the vehicle, and they don't perform these preventive maintenance tasks and other services. The same is true for drivers, So I'll be very honest with you. I really don't know of any technology that can replace the visual inspection required of drivers and technicians, let alone actually working on all that, Yeah, make sure your blue light during season. Just, oh man, you're really pumped me up for winter here. So now, accomplishing these tasks, it really has become harder, and it's always been hard with the winter. But we're no different than any other industry right now. We have a lack of qualified technicians and drivers. And I'm not even going to get into the debate on, different generational stuff and everything here, But I do run across many young generation people that are willing to give our industry a try. And that's great, And I look at, my camera guy, Jordan, I just plucked him out of the... Harley, I hate to disappoint you, but Elena's not here today. She had some issues, so, next month. But anyway, I plucked him out just to do the camera work. With some guidances, they might become better than we think we are, us older guys. As another side note, I really see great qualities in the people that participate in any trainings I do. And that I sincerely mean it from my heart. All you guys, I will give her best. She just had a few little issues, got sick and everything. But again, important fact, working on trucks is hard. And I guess maybe that's one of the reasons we're having trouble getting qualified people, because it truly isn't for everyone. If everyone can do it, we would never have to have an issue with, having enough guys working on vehicles. But again, the holidays are coming, so I got to tell you guys, thank you all that have endured all the years, and the ones that are new to our industry. You truly keep our country going. So that's my little kind of like attaboy, guys. Now, preventive maintenance has always been the backbone of our industry because it ensures vehicles are in safe operating condition throughout the vehicle's life. Life cycle, excuse me. And one of the ways we do it is we perform a good preventive maintenance, okay? And as absolutely also, go to the extreme a little bit. We try to reduce crash risk just because of the way we work on and, we follow a set procedures and stuff. Some of the advantages of well-planned PM program are reduced on-road failures, increased longevity of vehicle, components or systems, lower maintenance costs. And I'm not going to spend hardly any time besides this slide just to give you the benefits. Not to mention a fewer driver complaints, Now, this is where we're at now. Harsh winters with extreme temperature and great amount of snow lead to increased use of salt, calcium, chloride, and other chemicals that can take a toll on vehicles and technicians performing PMs, as well as an increase in issues with electronic systems such as lights and ABS. I'm hesitating. I want to make sure I'm on the right path here, okay? So, large fleets, if you got wash bays and spare equipment, you know what? You might be able to minimize winter issues and so on, okay? However, there's so many smaller carriers and owner-operators without these advantages. So let's start with the driver, for example. The vehicle's been sitting outside overnight, or driven throughout the day or night, depending on what your shifts are, through a harsh winter environment. How useful of a pre-trip or post-trip do you think the vehicle is going to receive when everything is packed with snow and ice, covered with layers of salt, not to mention the single-digit temperatures? It worsens even if these conditions persist for a prolonged period. I gotta tell you, it's times like those we hope the vehicle has received a thorough PM service to prevent these issues. And of course, PM service prior to getting into this kind of weather. I mean, really go through these vehicles knowing that winter is upon us, knowing that your vehicle is going to come up north, okay? And that might alleviate some pressures from the drivers, okay? And believe it or not, we already had our first snow, and if you're from the south, okay, I don't know if you see over the drift over there, okay, this was, I think, last year's pictures, a year before. We had some huge, the roofs of the trucks are sitting there, and I kind of snuck into work even though the roads were closed, and of course I opened the door, and I got to get myself a path over there, but you get the drift. Excuse me, it'll work on buns. But this one here, this picture here, this actually was just a couple weeks ago. I had to go over and, absolutely, Harley. In my brake classes, I spend a lot of time lot of time explaining the calcium chloride and sodium chloride and so on, into the rust jacking, and how, you know, if you're going to pressure wash, I mean, you better really do good pressure washing, because what happens with that brine is, just when you think everything's done, it is less corrosive, don't get me wrong, but however, water starts that little bit less than road salt corrosive action, and this keeps on going. And in our area here, all of a sudden, since they started using it, you can see every springtime they're out there with these huge water tanks and pressure washing underneath the bridge, the beams, and so on, you know. So thank you for reminding me on that. But anyway, this was about a week again. You can already see, you know, I shudder when I see that. So let's consider the vehicle. Now it's due for a scheduled PM service, packed with snow, ice, salt, and brine. In places where it is crucial to see and check components, brakes, hoses, chambers, slacks, suspension, steering, and so on. There might also be a tight deadline to get the vehicle on the road, perhaps due to lack of spare vehicles and commitments to loads. You know, I can spend hours just talking about that end of it. So the thing is, with this vehicle, receive a proper PM service from a technician that is also, and this I know Harley and a lot of you guys know, is getting wet from due to the snow, ice, and don't forget the slushy. I mean, love that salt when it gets into the cuts in your hands, dripping on them while performing their tasks underneath. How about the basic tasks of lubricating components that are not hard to see or get to? Actually, I'm going to stop right here for a second. Greasing, that was my trigger. That's why I was, you know. And then add winter contaminants. Absolutely, boy, you guys get the drift, you know. So, but anyway, greasing, eh? Greasing is so important, and one of the problems is that these components do wear. You know, I tried to clean this up, but this is a camshaft. Okay, so the reason I'm showing you this, okay, is I'm going to head to the board, and hopefully Jordan can follow. When I do my brake classes, I'm going to give you a perfect example, because one of the, and now I can't see who's answering because I'm by the board, but usually I ask the guys, for example, if you had the type of system you had to change some seals, and I give the options, how would you put the seals in? Because typically those little seals, you know, those little ones, you put the bushings in, it's just like the wheel seals, you got a air side, you got an oil side and everything. And I give everybody choices. And I put on, you know, this is the lip over here, which you put it A, B here. And like I said, I can't see the chat right now. But usually what happens is everybody stops and they start thinking about it, like, okay, somebody will say A, somebody will say B, somebody B. So because I only have an hour to go, what I tell everybody, the way you want it is AA, okay? And the reason you want this for AA is because of the next question I'm going to ask you, okay? What are you trying to do when you grease for example, this thing up here? And everybody say, well, yeah, reduce friction so nothing binds up. Yeah, that's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer. But I'm going to go back to over here again, okay? And I'll grab this. And the reason I did this was, okay, go like this. Now, this seal that you see here, okay, I didn't drive it out. This was loose in here. We got all this stuff. So the point I'm trying to make with greasing, this is why I wear the rags, you know. Gonna get my fancy, boy, good thing I didn't have my bow tie on, you know. I would get that dirty and I'd be really, Harley would be really ticked off at me. But what I tell everybody, listen, in that situation, crap gets in. So what you want to do with greasing is, and you can picture this, you've got your grease gun over here, and it's going to hit the wall over here. The more you pump it, It's going to tighten up the seal. Is that beneficial? Absolutely, because this is the end of the camshaft. Over here, you're going to have brake shoes. You don't want this grease to go in there. But because it hits this, it's going to turn around and it's going to want to go out over here. But along with it, what's it going to do? It's going to purge all the crap, and everything that got in there is going to get purged out. And you guys know, okay, if this thing goes into the slack splines and keep those lubricated, man, that's a blessing in disguise. Those of you that have had to take some of these frozen slacks off and everything, dry as a bone in there. So, you know, now I'm back to it. Yeah, purge out the water that has intruded. Flush contaminants out. Absolutely. Okay. Get out crud and moisture. Guys are good. Spring guard. Yeah, I saw that. Absolutely. You know. But anyway, that's what I wanted to point out with yeah, absolutely. Brakes release. Why am I doing this? You guys got all the answers here. Goodbye, guys. Have a Thanksgiving. You know, just kidding. Yeah. So I'm going to get back to this. I love the feedback. Great, great. You know. So anyway, greasing is important, right? The problem is that you have no idea. I should get back. When I get these vehicles coming in, they're packed with dirt, packed with this, packed with everything else. And we really have some issues. Oh, one more before I go on here. Right here. Let's stay on the greasing subject right now. You guys know what this is? This is the front spring pin, okay, on a steer axle on the pin. And if the rest of it would have gone, guess what? You back off a little, Jordan. You know, can you imagine this breaking off? The guys in the middle make a turn, and all of a sudden the spring comes loose and locks up and everything else. Why do you think this is worn like this? Right? Greasing. And I don't have to tell you guys know, a lot of you guys know, you've gotten these vehicles in, you go to grease the pins in the shackles and so on and so on. You can't get it in, and you pull the circ fittings out, you replace the circ fitting, you put whatever in there, you try everything, and after half an hour, you're over there like, screw this, you let it go. Well, then the next guy lets it go, next guy lets it go, next guy lets it go. Before you know it, and that's real world. That's what happens out there. You know, it's the little things. Instead of somebody say, listen, it's not getting grease. You know what? Let's get this pin out of there, put a new pin in, whatever it takes. And especially that, can you imagine in the wintertime now, the guy's under there, snow, ice, and everything else? Do you think he's even going to try? It's either going to take grease or not, you know. And of course, you know, I know we're not doing, you know, smaller vehicles. Lack of grease. I mean, I can go on and on and on. You know, these things are very tight in here. You need to get them to make sure you get the grease. The lubrication is so huge, you know. So remember with the ball joints when years ago Ford got rid of the ball joints on a lot of their vehicles? It's like, oh no, they're self-lubricating. We got the materials that are kick-ass. I never changed more ball joints in my life since then, you know. So, but again, you know, good idea. I like, you know what? Common sense. Harley, you and I see that you actually put it in capital letters. Absolutely, you know. Now, let's get back to this. Looking at these pictures, can you give it a quick PM? Okay? And of course, the next thing from the companies, we'll pick it up first thing tomorrow morning. You know, what time do you open? Can you keep it inside so it will be dry and warm for our driver? I mean, guys, you face this stuff all the time. You know, I got to have the vehicle in the morning. It comes in late in the afternoon. You know, I got to have it. And of course, when you tell that company, yeah, I'll give it a quick PM, and that's exactly what it is, a quick PM. Wintertime is not the time for a quick PM, but you might be forced to do a quick PM. And this is why previous to winter, you really want to make sure you cover all your bases, because unfortunately, that's the real world out there, you know. Yes, harsh winters tax both man and machine. This takes a certain type of person to work under these conditions and pressures. Again, I mentioned it. However, even with the best personnel, the temptation might be to perform what I call a pencil inspection, checking off a task list without performing the actual task. That's the real world. Okay? The cost of passing on a load can far outweigh the cost of unnecessary breakdowns or missing delivery window because the vehicle and driver are sitting on the side of the road with an out-of-service condition or worse, an accident, or just totally broke down, ain't moving because something critical was not found because a proper PM service was not performed. Okay, I'm just throwing thoughts out there, guys. That's all I'm doing here. And take it from me, I've been doing this for 100 years. No, I haven't. It's not 100 years, but it's been a lot of years, okay? Unfortunately, harsh winter months can interrupt those ideal PM schedules. With that in mind, it might be worthwhile not to adhere to wear limits that could possibly pass under normal conditions. You know, why you know what? No, it hasn't failed. You know, if you're talking about brake pads, you know, they're not 1/4 inch yet, but damn, they're close to 1/4 inch. Don't wait till the extremes. Get it done, you know. But now with uncertainty of adhering to schedules could pose an issue if allowed to continue beyond the next scheduled PMs. So because of the weather, you broke into it, you can't really get at it the way you should. And, you know, it's just a vicious cycle that we opened up, you know, when it comes to winter. You'd be surprised how often vehicle has been found with deficiencies or violations. Some shop supervisor, safety person, or owner has told me that vehicle is due for service, inspection, or repair of the discovered violation in the near future. Again, you know, we can come up with all the excuses in the world, but we need to make it happen. Do the right thing. In the winter environments, the near future doesn't always happen. You know, yeah, I was going to get it in, you know, I didn't get a chance and so on. You got to be proactive. Most of the time, these situations could have been avoided by a good predictive maintenance program. Yeah. Lights, they are a perfect sample of time and effort wisely spent. And a lot of times I get the questions, what can be done to reduce constant light violation? And of course, I always relate to the violations because these vehicles, you know, no matter where you are in the country, they're prone to get pulled over. But lights aren't just about getting pulled over and getting violations. Lights are important. They are very, very important. I mean, we need them. Nighttime, we need stoplights. You need to let somebody know you're going to stop and so on and so on. And I try to tell these companies, listen, when that vehicle comes in for a PM service, you got to give the technician extra time and resources to concentrate on wiring, connectors, and protection. Actually physically look at the plugs. It's not good enough, especially when you're going into the winter months, to just walk around. Okay, turn the lights on. Yep, tail lights are on. Yep, turn the turns. They're on. Around 2 minutes later, it's like, okay, all the lights work. But guess what? That green stuff. Are you looking for the green stuff on the terminals and connections? Not to mention, of course, throughout the course, and that's typical when you're in commercial motor vehicles, especially the ass end of these tractors when they're always exposed, that spaghetti-looking wiring due to repeated repairs. The cure for it, of course, is when you run into this and do it before winter, because you got gazillion butt connectors in there. You don't know who did the butt connectors, and you know, and so on and so on. The cure is snip and replace the fresh harness, plugs, and wires. But again, physically walk over there and look at the lights, look at the plugs, because I haven't seen a single plug. You know that, you know, if they're going to go, you got telltale signs. You got that green. I was going to use another word. You got that green stuff. You know. Think about loop of wires feeding into your home. Keeps water. Yeah, very good idea. Absolutely. Absolutely, Bo. You know, possible during wire, try to create a drip loop. Bo, just I got to mention, I hope you're doing well. We got the technician competition coming up, and we moved it up to March. Just wanted to let you know, okay? Call the green crusties. I got another word for it, but we'll keep it nice, you know. Thank you, Harley. So again, use shrink type connectors, terminals for every exposed electrical. And if you're doing shrink connectors, you know how you heat the actual connector and stuff. Don't heat it to a point that it kind of like melts away from it. And then I see that a lot. You know, there's such a thing as overkill too. Always verify that you did a really good job at sealing it, and don't forget to tug on them, you know. It's that little extra effort in time and minimal additional expense that will prevent reoccurring problems. It's another area the driver shouldn't have to worry about, because again, we started out with like, how's the driver going to do a pre-trip when everything's packed and all that stuff. Another goal is to reduce driver complaints, okay? And again, you know, it's so easy to complain if something goes wrong. Yeah, it was a guy in the shop. Yeah, I just had it in there, you know. So, you know what? After a while, it does get tiring. But, you know, anything we do to reduce this, you know, be beneficial. And again, we're back comparing costs of proper repairs versus costs of breakdowns, missed loads, appointments, and so on. Okay. I think
this on Mac originally came
I'm not sure if you guys can. Let me know if you can hear it. I can't hear it on my end.
We did put a scan tool on, and it led us to this situation here. Not necessarily as a
can
fix,
somebody
but when you turn your
kind of say yes?
four-ways on, you can see how nice.
No.
The rhythm is there.
Okay, I'll walk you through it. You know, this is just a perfect example. You know, it's the type of vehicle, we had some issues with it and everything else, and you know, it affected the lights, and basically when you turn on the turn signal, you can see how flashy it was, flashing very, very rapidly, okay?
That is the issue.
So that was a telltale sign of what's going on, you know. And now where do you start, you know, and this is one of those areas, I can't remember how long the video is, I think we're almost done. It's repeating itself by time. But anyway, it was a real world light issue. And this particular Mac, the only reason I got it in there, guess what? Okay, that green stuff. What happens when that green stuff crosses over and everything else? So, you know, and believe it or not, this particular Mac had the provision to pull a trailer and everything. And, you know, who would figure, you know, you got to crawl underneath, you got to look at, and you can't beat those visual inspections, you know. And this is another one. So I'm going to walk through this a little bit fast. The same thing, you know. You see we're having issues with light. And this one, I believe, was a dim light, and so on and so on and so on, you know. So basically, you know, walking over to the side, trying to figure out, you can see in a fender it worked over there. We're not having a good luck with it at all. You know, it's not working. So, you know, you do your typical checks, guys, you know, are you getting this, are you getting that, and everything else. You know, and of course in today's lights, it's not as simple anymore, you know. I'm not trying to say this is like working with computers or anything, but, you know, again. So now, there it is, guys. Harley mentioned the brine, the salt, calcium chloride. You know, those are the things that are our enemies, you know. Yeah, light duty trailer. They made that provision to haul. You know, this was a kind of a huge medium duty shredder truck, but in case, you know, they come from the factory that way, or when they, you know, when they built it, you know. So the provision is there. If, you know, I don't know why you would haul a light trailer, but, you know, because we're really heavy duty guys. Just kidding, you know. But anyway, it's all I'm showing the effects of that, you know. And there's another example, but the lights were working when I did a pre-trip. But the lights were working when I did a PM. And of course, I don't know how good you guys can see by the arrow right there. And everything you see here, that's what I was trying to make a point that, you know what, we're heading into the winter months, and really you should do that anytime. But this is the type of stuff you want to nip in the butt before it becomes a issue. You know, so God gave us greatest tools that you can ever have, you know, brains, eyes, ears, all that stuff. We don't use it to our full capacity sometimes, you know. All of these are problem, or more so because we're doing the pitfalls, okay, they will be a future issue. And again, we're back to, or do you just look to see that the light works? It works at this moment in time, okay? Good inspection needs to be the catalyst to prevent problems, because think of that word, PMs. Preventive maintenance, preventive maintenance, preventive, preventive, preventive. Sometimes we lose sight of what that word means. Air. Air's an issue, isn't it? We want a lot of air, don't we? Volume of air, they're required. Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard tells you how much air we're supposed to have. Combined volume of all service supply reservoirs must be at least 12 times combined volume and everything else. Trailers, those requirements are there. They're spelled out. Manufacturers have to meet the... By the way, I just, yesterday or Monday, there was a recall or two. I can't remember which manufacturer. Their tanks can't meet these requirements, so they got a recall on it. So even from the factory it comes out kind of mistake-wise. But what happens is, I'm not going to go through, you know, this is, don't, just look at this as a exercise here. So the formula would be 12 chambers times 2.5 full times 4, and everything else, you know. And then I usually in another slide, I have a slide that says you can figure it out yourself. All you got to know is how much a type 30, what the volume of the chamber requirement is. Just do the math. But anyway, concentrate on the 3,600 cubic inch, because what I'm going to say is, what happens if reservoirs are loaded up with water and contaminants, right? Primary function of the air supply is to deliver clean, dry, compressed air to regulate pressure, sufficient quantity. Okay, that's what's required, guys. Supply system has a secondary function. I mean, these guys, they want to live in comfort today. I mean, they want those nice, soft little suspensions with a seat, you know, with a vehicle. The cab has a bag, you know, don't forget your seats too, you know, not back in the day in 46, you know. I mean, those were the good old days, you know. We didn't kind of cry about it, you know. Yep. Yep. I see that. Technicians should be aware of digital systems, eh? In the real world, okay, in the real world, this is what happens out there. That compressor, okay, it compresses. When you compress something, you're gonna generate heat. You know, I'm not even gonna get into the diesels and compression and, you know, all that stuff and everything else. But you're gonna have a little bit of misting of oil coming out, which isn't bad, lubricates the stuff. But when you start combining this stuff, okay, guess what? You're setting yourself for some problems. Not to mention hot days, cold nights, you know, travel by houses. Look at what those propane, if you use propane for whatever reason, you know. So you're setting yourself up for a problem, okay? Now, real world of preventive maintenance, discussion slide. And I got to watch how I say this, okay? You see this thing here? Right, let me make sure of what I got on next slide, okay? I'll get back to this one here. Wait to do this till the temperature is 10 degrees? Okay. Yep. You don't have to hear it, okay? See that cable over there? Okay. So, let me go back. Okay. You know what? I'm going to do something on board. It won't take me. Guys, Damn it, I might have a little issue going past the time. I'll try to slug through this real fast. We're not doing too bad. But this here, I'm going to be polite. I'm going to be polite, okay? The reason I'm going to be polite is this is meant for drivers to drain the air tank, okay? It's a piece of SH, okay? But it isn't. You know, ideally you want drivers to drain the tanks and stuff. They're not going to crawl underneath it. So they came up with this thing, you know, put the other end wherever so the driver can get under the tank. If they can't get underneath it, they pull it. But guess what? It's 20 degrees outside, 30 degrees out. When you pull this little thing over here, okay, you're just going to let out a little mist of air. And when you let that out, a little bit of moisture, vapor, whatever, the driver's like, okay, I'm done. I drained it. Okay, so real 2 seconds. I'm going to draw something. Air tank. Okay. I'm going to put an opening over here. Just pretend you got air coming in from your compressor and stuff. You know, boom, boom, boom over here. It's going to fill it up 120 PSI. Okay. And then what happens here is, combined with everything, you're going to have all the previous light, all everything else. Guess where it's going to go? It's going to go on the walls, isn't it? That stuff is heavy. So along you come with that, wherever I put it again. Oh, along you come. Yeah, find me over here. I'm not going to follow you, okay? Along you, driver comes, opens this up. But realistically, you didn't give time for actually open this up, okay, and to get all that heavy stuff to come off the walls. And that's like, basically, I do prefer a pepcock, you know. So that's my 2 cents here, guys. Okay? So like I said, all of a sudden I feel that I'm looking at a clock up there that you guys can't see. I'm feeling, you know, so wrong clicker. So let me get back on, you know, so that's my feeling with that, you know. Okay. Anybody see anything wrong over here? Real fast. I'll give you 2 seconds. Drain hanging. Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you got, well, besides this broken bracket here, of course, you know, strap holding up this tank, but at one time, somebody put a Schrader valve in for whatever reason, doesn't matter. You know, I had to fill it up with air, engine wouldn't start, I had to move it, whatever the case may be to release the brakes. What did they not do? Okay, they didn't pull that out, put that in there, you know, and that's sad, you know. By the way, just so you know, it's a requirement. Every air tank has to have a means of draining, you know, draining. Hey driver, did you drain your air tank? Yes, I do. When was the last time you did it? Yesterday during my pre-trip. Damn, someone must have stolen the drain valve when it was parked for your 15-minute break. I just got through saying, you know, what? Every tank has to have a drain, you know. I'm being a wise guy. Again, be aware of drain valve thieves, guys, out there. There's big money in that. Just wanted to, you know. So.
Wow. Holy moly.
Oh, yeah, I drained them. So by the way, this truck was from the south. I remember this one. And the guy was complaining I had some issues with the brakes. Could you check that out too, you know? And basically, remember the volume of air? You step on the brake, what volume of air wasn't there was using up whatever it could and just not keeping up. So this is just an example, guys, you know, and take my word for it. It's one thing to have this in the summertime, but can you imagine in the wintertime? I mean, just think about the lines you have out there going wherever and everything, you know. So needless to say, okay, and this is why I already mentioned air dryers over there, you know. Air dryers are really nice, okay. What makes them special is they got that desiccant in there. They're very, very, very kind of I always have a hard time explaining it, you know, and I guess I got to do the action thing. So those little pellets they're absorbent, ADBSORBENT. For me to make it very stupidly simple is when that moisture-laden air goes through that cartridge, through the pellets, those pellets absorb it really, really nice, okay? But unlike a sponge, when it's time to purge this thing, okay, the air is going to drop back down, okay, and it's going to, as it passes by the pellets, okay, it'll take it and boom, it'll whip that moisture out of there. You don't have to squeeze it and all that stuff. Simple enough, right? Yeah. Moisture drain can contain, oh yeah, and you learn the hard way. You learn the hard way. If you're ever near there and you're trying to do that, absolutely, you know, so, but let me switch this here. We're pushing time. So, like I said, I can go through this whole thing, you know, it's going to take time, but I'm also trying to watch my time here, you know, so, but again, you know, the way it works, just so you know, okay, you got a purge valve on the bottom over here, okay, so you get it up to 120 pounds, and this is where you see air reversing itself. High pressure likes to see low pressure, 120, 14.7 outside. You're relying, when it goes into unloading, the compressor does, okay, little signal goes to a purge, opens it up, and voila, boom, you hear that big whoosh of air coming out. But again, the point I'm trying to make is now you got moisture inside there and everything. What happens if this line freezes? What happens if purge valve doesn't open? And again, if you're from the south, you probably might not experience this stuff. But however, you know, however, if you're up north, guys, you know, all you northern guys, vehicle comes in, and that's when you wind up changing these air dryers and so on, you know. Yeah, and even, you know, to be honest with you too, how about underneath a when you set the parking brakes and you're under the valve over there in the back, and all of a sudden, push, you know, air exhausts out of there. So I'm gonna let me do something real quick. I'm going to put this on. Okay. Now, I'm looking at my time. So, again, I do have a typical air dryer here. So, just so you know what you're doing with this thing here is, you know, you're filling it up with air. Right? That's all you're doing. I don't have to put much air in. So, I get 120 pounds of air. Okay. And then you see this little wire here? So pretend this is my unloader here. So when my compressor unloads, to kind of like, hey, don't pump any more air in, you know, and the only way you can do it, you got to open up, and like I said, in my brake class, I walked through the whole thing, but regardless, that unloader signal goes there, and that unloader signal takes about 15, 20 seconds sometimes. But what you hear is, you know, you reached the maximum that this thing's going to pump out when you're sitting in a cab, and you hear this, okay? And of course, everything gets drained out, you know, so blah, 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 this. Automatically, like I said, it will stop. But this is the winter months, guys, right? This is the winter months. This is fine in the summertime, but what the hell are these wires over here, right? What are they? I don't know. Must be a reason for it. Let me think this through, guys. Winter, moisture, going down the road, 100 miles an hour, wind coming through here. Oh, I wonder if this could possibly freeze up. How the hell can I stop it from freezing? Oh, if I put a nice little heater in there, right? So if it's a heater, I got to give it voltage, don't I? Okay. So you don't want direct battery, you always want to do it with ignition, so when it comes on with ignition. So if this is a heater, there's probably a heater element in there. Heater element, you got to get a lot of what? Probably current, right? So the resistance should be what? Over here. I'm not looking at chat box. The resistor should be lighter for PM mechanic. I like that. Okay. but the resistance should be low, right? You guys watch my electrical course, you know. You got to catch me here, Jordan, okay? So, yeah, you're fine, okay? Because it's going to take a lot of amps to do this, right? Resistance, if it's low, amps go up. Resistance high, amps go low. So, my thinking, this needs to have a little low resistance. Does everybody agree with that? Yeah? Harley, shut up, okay? It's not just sometimes, but you spoiled it for me. You spoiled it for me. Yeah. So, I'm going to use my ohm meter, right? The hell? Is there something wrong with this heater stuff? What Harley said there is, and a lot of guys don't realize that these heaters, they're depend on temperature, okay? So here's a perfect example. This comes out of there, okay? So if you want it, you can check. You always want to make sure you got voltage and ground to it. That absolutely, all day long. You know, make sure because if you don't know. If nobody checks these, how do you know you even got to start for this to work in the wintertime? Take my word for it. I get these calls all the time. My vehicle is froze up. I can't build up air and everything else, right? So what happens is, you're not going to get anything happening until what? This cools down, okay? So now, all of a sudden, you got a choice. So you put an ice cube or whatever, make it happen cold. But in cold weather is when you want to check this, okay? Does that make sense? Okay? And then gradually, like I said, it'll gradually go from, depending on what you're doing, depending on temperature, it can be from 3 ohms up to, once it starts working down to 1,000 ohms, but you gotta, do that. So if you're gonna check this thing here, you gotta make sure you're doing it in the wintertime. And I'll guarantee you a lot of guys never realize that, okay? You should test them in freezer when overhauling. Yeah, absolutely. But the point, and I like that, the point being is that, how many guys even think about testing that thing, about checking it? Or do you take it for granted that, we live in a perfect world, they will fail, okay? So now, let's see what other things, 2-lead wire harness, weather-resistant connector, 1 lead goes ignition switch, remaining lead goes to a good vehicle ground, 10 amp fuse, 12 volt. And by the way, they usually come with 12 or 24 volt, My point being, again, what are we doing here today? Make this a pre-winter check. Volts, amps, whatever works for you. Use your meters and stuff. What do you know about windshield wipers and washers? Where would you find it? Part 393.78. Here we go again. Swede's coming up with the regulation stuff again. I knew he was going to get into it eventually. Damn straight. Because if you've watched a lot of my stuff, if you watched a lot of my stuff, you know how, I keep mentioning we are one of the most regulated industries. But anyway, where else would you find it? How about the North American Standard Out of Service, that out of service that everybody is afraid of? My vehicle's going to be put out of service and so on, okay? There you'll find windshield wipers. Any power unit that has an inoperative wiper, missing or damaged parts that render it ineffective on the driver's side. Applicable only in inclement weather requiring use of windshield wipers. So, yeah, you can get into trouble, if it doesn't work and everything, if you get pulled over. But common sense. Why would you not make sure that everything is working hunky-dory? Take my word for it. I've lost my wipers. I got this Ford pickup truck of mine, okay, where they put the little nozzles for it is the stupidest engineering thing I ever seen. They're exposed out there, not even, they're under the cowl. Everything's under cowl. You couldn't have put them more into, whatever. But man, I have nothing but freeze up problems with the washers every freaking winter. I mean, and I'll dump all sorts of stuff in there besides the windshield washer fluid. But if you're from the north, and if you're sending your driver up from the south to the north, and all of a sudden he runs into that weather of ours, let me tell you, you would wish that everything was working. Eh? Whoops. Windshield washer, of course, too, you know. What do we know about windshield washer wipers? Each of these vehicles must have a windshield washing system that meets the requirements of Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 104 in effect. This is in your handouts. I'm pushing time again, you know. But anyway, if this is what makes you want to work on vehicles, to look up all this stuff and everything else, you know, again, I do a lot of regulation stuff. What about defrosters? Oh, is it a requirement? Guess what? Windshield defrosting, defogging system, vehicle manufacturer on or after, blah, blah, blah. Each bus, truck, and truck tractor manufacturer on or after must have a windshield defrosting, defogging system meets the requirements Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 103 in effect of the date of manufacture. Okay? It's a requirement, which makes it possibly a roadside violation. Okay? But again, it should fall under the common sense requirement. Real world preventive maintenance. These are perfect example of cracks and brine, calcium chloride and stuff. We need to be vigilant for that kind of stuff. Those are the effects. Okay, this is extreme but not uncommon. Okay, and if you never experience our northern weather and climate and everything, you probably wind up changing more linings and stuff due to cracks and stuff than lining wear, you know. I mean, it really tests us, you know. Little reminder, guys. What are the stickers on that windshield? Oh, I thought enforcement people don't do inspections when it's cold and snowy outside. All day long, cracked wheels. Okay? This one here, damn it, the sound wasn't there, so I'm not, you know, pushing time anyway. Trailer came off, broken timer spring, other issues. Do you check components or do you only do a tug check? What about the abuse from drivers trying to connect to trailer with fifth wheel packed with snow? Hit it harder, hit it harder, hit it harder. Guys, these things, if you're with tractor trailers, they do take abuse, and more so in a winter time, okay? Does this look okay? I don't know. It's awful, awful cruddy over there, you know. Not the brightest bulb around, but I think this combination of everything in the hubbub can generate a huge problem. Wonder if it could freeze in sub-zero weather sitting overnight. What do you think was the cause of this, you know? Basically, this is an example of my friend Jim, and I think he's the one with Semper Fi probably. He was doing commercial motor vehicles. You know, maybe it's not him, but you know. But anyway, you know, we're both underneath their vehicle doing inspection, and guess what? Binding.
What the hell just came off?
Release the brakes, driver, and you got to whack it to unbind it. Again, proper greasing. What can I say? When he had hair, yeah, it's okay, nice, nice. He truly is my friend. We spend a lot of time together, you know, reminiscing old stuff, you know. But again, you're looking at what? Lack of proper maintenance. Spring shackles, pins are worn. They're hitting each other, aren't they? Okay. Perfect example. Do you check that kind of stuff? I mean, this is nothing about banging down the road, and it's that effect. Once these start banging, they're not going to fix themselves. By the way, back up. Look at that grease fitting on there. You think anybody's ever had grease in there? And that's exactly what we're trying to say here. Even these things here, you know. Preventive maintenance starts and ends on the floor. You can have all the telematics, data, and numbers in the world. However, if the tasks aren't performed properly, the numbers and data are meaningless. In December, I'm going to put, because it's one of those, if you look over here, blah, 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 I'm going to shut this off in a second here. All right? Reduce breakdowns. This is in your handout. But I'm not going to tell you how many years I've been doing this. You know, I've seen so many winters, you know. I mean, when I first started, speaking of Simplify, when I got back, you know, but from a nice little warm country when I got back, you know, I mean, really warm. It was a little quite warm, you know, but I made it back. So, but my first job was working in a trucking company and everything else. So I've seen the transition going from, you know, but we didn't have the technology, didn't have the fuel and the air dryers and everything. I mean, I used to spend more time on the roll calls and service. You shake a stick. We're pretty lucky today. But forget about how it was years ago. Some things still don't change, you know. I mean, every winter we keep seeing the same stuff. Frozen airlines, frozen this. Nothing moves. I mean, you know, lights don't work. It's like due to all these corrosion and everything else. So I'm very confident in saying, okay, I'm very confident in saying that with my years of experience of actually working on this stuff, that, you know what, we can weather the storms, but shops, fleets, all of us, we need to kind of remind ourselves, back to the very first few slides, the winters can task both the vehicle and, never forget, it can take a toll on us guys too as technicians, you know. So, but with a little help, we can do it. And the one I'm going to do in December, I'll probably spend a little bit more time, you know, expand on, like, you know, how does the air dryer work and stuff like that. And, you know, I won't have the time pressure, like, well, 1 hour, let's go through everything else and so on. So we'll do a lot of good stuff in there. You know, I'll look at maybe, you know, batteries, stuff like that. I mean, guys, battery starters, they're an issue. I mean, winters take a toll on that and everything, you know. Never hurts to coat those clothespins. Bo, I just got through talking about back in 46, just kidding. Back when I got back in 68, you know, in the fleet that I started with, we did the PMs a little bit different, okay? We actually had those railroad cans, and we actually used to shoot all the pins and stuff and everything. We don't do that anymore. So our PMs are more of a kind of, let's go in there, let's do it, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Don't desire to be outside in February. Perform better inside December. And you know what? That's a good way of leaving it off. If everybody did a good preventive maintenance, can you imagine no service calls, no having to go outside? Bo, all day long, you know. It'd be almost as good as, you know, Robert had in the beginning in Florida, 70 degrees. You know what? I'd never have to move to Florida. Be working inside a nice little place. So guys, the time has come, and I'm going to leave you guys off with one thing. We outside of Harley, I hope you had a very nice Thanksgiving, and any of you other guys from Canada that are watching, you know, I know that was huge, and ours is coming up. So I really truly wish everybody and your families a happy Thanksgiving, and don't lose sight of, I know right now doesn't seem like it's best in the world for everybody, but just even personally, take care of each other, you know, be thankful what you have, because there's always somebody that has it worse than us. So, and again, guys, thank you so much for month after month coming and watching. And like I said, one of these years, I'm going to talk to G. He's got the big TST event coming on. Maybe the time has come. Maybe we ought to do something similar so we can all meet someplace and spend a day or two and do training and network and everything else, you know. So, you know, thank you again. I'll leave it on for a second, just to make sure everybody, you know, and then I'll shut it off, you know. Thank you, David. You know, thank you, Robert. You know, thank you, Harley, even though you're trying to bust my balls a little bit, but I enjoy it. I really do. You know, absolutely good stuff. Good stuff. Bo, everybody that contributes. That I learned from you guys, you know. So, you know, Ed, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving. You know, that's my.
Thank you, Swede.
Okay. All right. We'll call. Yep.
Great job. Thank you again. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you and G and your whole families. You know.
And you as well.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.